one of you guys did the thing. Right, sorry. This is Flameland. It's the platformer I'm making. It's short, it's cute, it's colorful, you know the drill. One of you guys did the thing. And thank you so much. Because today's devlog is about my journey with Flameland's camera and also this Google form. Because look, as a solo, amateur game developer, it's really hard to get people to play my game. I don't ask for likes on videos, I'm not asking now, I'm trying to make a point, but if you look at the like to view count, you'll see, even on my best videos, it's only about 1 out of every 10 people who watches the video enjoys the video enough to like it. CGP Grey, in a Cortex episode, Cortex is a podcast he does with Myke, he talks about activation energy. You know, it takes a certain amount of activation energy to watch a video to the end. Even more energy to like the video. Even more energy to comment on the video. Commenting actually takes time out of your day. So if someone leaves a comment on your video, they either really liked or really hated it. It had to inspire enough of an emotional reaction that they actually wanted to do an action. This rings true to me because it reflects my own YouTube behavior. I watch a lot more videos than I like a lot more videos than I comment on. But now, think how much more energy it must take for someone to stop their YouTube binging, open a video description, click a link in that description, download a game from that external link, and then actually play that game. To be honest, I wasn't sure it had ever happened off of one of my videos. And even if someone did download my game, they would have to convince their computer it's not a virus so that they could play it, and the computer wouldn't automatically delete it. I made the darn thing, and I had to convince my own computer to not delete exe files so I could play my own game. The real reason I'm trying to get my game on Steam is not so that I can make money, but so that I could believe someone could plausibly download my game and not have to tell their computer, no, it's not a virus, really it's okay, I'm gonna play this now. Where was I? Right, today I know someone did download the game and play Flameland. Someone I didn't pay on Fiverr to test it, someone who's not one of my personal friends. And what's more, they then went to this Google form and gave feedback. And thank you so much. But okay, I've put it off long enough. What did the feedback say? Well, in the nicest way possible, they tried to tell me that the camera wasn't really working for them. So today is my journey with that camera, because even before that feedback, that camera and I had been on a journey. From the start of this version of Flameland, because this is iteration 5, the camera has had look ahead, which in cinema terms is like nose room. For video games, this is extra important so you can see upcoming obstacles, but it also just looks better. Now, because video games are an interactive medium and the direction that the nose room needs to be in can change, I need the camera to be able to move in front of the player when they change directions. And my first attempts at that were no good, because I was conceiving of the camera as like another entity in the world, like any old enemy or any other character. It just moved about in the world space like anything else. Once it was properly ahead of the character, it would lock in place, but until then, it needed to catch up to where it needed to be, which was a problem if a very fast character changed directions, or a very fast character started a new screen. Basically, the camera was capable of falling behind if a player was moving too fast for it. So I recoded it. I told the camera your x-coordinate will be the player's current x-coordinate plus z, where z is the number that I change gradually. Or another way to put it, rather than conceive of the camera as an object in the level, I conceived of the camera as existing on a separate plane, and that plane was always centered on the character. Okay, here's the visual metaphor I came up with. Let's say there's a griffin that's trying to move from one end of the train to another. If the griffin is flying, then the train car can actually outpace the griffin. In fact, the faster the train car moves, the faster the griffin has to move to keep up. But if instead the griffin lands on the train and runs along the top, well, now it no longer matters how quickly the train car is moving because the griffin will reach the other end at the same speed regardless. The old camera was flying independently of the player. The new camera is walking on an invisible train car which centers on the player. I realize this may all be very obvious to anyone who has actually programmed a camera in a video game before, but it was not obvious to me, and I was very arrogantly not following a tutorial. Anyway, that fundamental shift had already happened before the suggestion. What the suggestion was pointing out was that when you change directions, the camera moved very quickly to try to orient itself in front of you, which means if you're trying for precise movement, the camera can become very jittery, especially while jumping. I had been, in fact, aware of this problem at one point, and I had tried to fix it by introducing a delay, because I did predict that players would take a step in the other direction without wanting to shift their perspective. So I did this thing where I told the camera to shift its perspective only if the character moved in a new direction for a certain length of time, but I could never figure out what that length of time should be. What if someone keeps tapping left because they don't want to go too far left, but they want to see in the leftward direction? And also, just every length of time I tried out, it didn't feel natural or right. So ahead of the last video, I had gotten rid of the delay entirely, thinking, maybe it doesn't matter, but never think that in game dev. Of course it matters. Of course it affects the experience drastically. This is the camera. It's incredibly important. And the feedback, thank you for that feedback, woke me up to that. Showed me that, hey, one thing you hadn't considered is just how drastically bad this is when jumping. So I ended up rewatching Mark Brown's video on 2D cameras, which is one of his best videos, and I'll link to in the comments because it's going to do a more thorough job than I'm doing in this video. At one point, it talks about how Cave Story does look ahead, and I was like, yes, okay, someone else is thinking about the camera the way I am. And then it talks about Fez, how Fez does the thing where the camera only moves if you push the edges of this invisible box. And suddenly I had this thought, why am I making the delay time-based? Why can't I make the delay spatial? I'm not doing what Fez is doing, but I'm kind of combining the Fez idea with the Cave Story idea. If the camera is oriented to the right of the player, my code records the player's furthest right x-coordinate, and will only tell the camera to switch directions to the left if the player is 32 pixels back from its furthest right x-coordinate. This allows for more precise mid-air movement without you having to fight the camera all the time. Now, is 32 pixels enough, or does the barrier need to be a little longer? It's impossible for me to tell because I've just played too much of my game, so if you get a chance, try it out, tell me what you think. Charlie from the future here to correct some of the mistakes of previous, younger, naive Charlie, who forgot that there were moving platforms in this game, which would move the character backwards without the player actually intending to go backwards, and which, if you're just recording x-coordinates, the camera thinks means the player is moving backwards. So I've added code to the swinging platforms and the dinosaur platforms and the treadmills and some other stuff so that the game will change the furthest right recorded x-coordinate by the amount that the player is being moved at the rate that the player is being moved. I also mentioned how I wasn't sure if 32 pixels was too sensitive for an amount that you move backward, or if it needed to be more sensitive, so I've actually added camera options to the cafe, so you can experiment for yourself, and I'll also try it to be experimenting. You can change the sensitivity and how far the camera looks ahead, and I think the stutter effect is pretty neat. If you turn it on, what will happen is when you take your finger off the accelerator, so your character is decelerating, but not at a complete stop yet, then the camera will increase its distance from the player. With this effect, I'm trying to sell the illusion that the camera is not tied to the player, that the camera is decelerating at its own rate and at its own time. Then when you start to accelerate again, the camera removes that distance slowly, so it almost looks like you jolt forward toward the camera, like the camera wasn't expecting you to start and has to catch up. My girlfriend is the only one who has seen this effect so far, and she was not a fan, so I turned the effect off by default, but you should check it out and let me know what you think, or if you have any ideas about how to make it look smoother. Oh, and finally, I've been looking into rooms where maybe I should be removing the lead room entirely, so there are certain rooms that are vertically oriented where I think it makes more sense for the character to be center screen. So far, I've given this treatment to the floating islands in the island level, and to the introduction to the woodlands level. The other thing I changed was the camera speed. There's this concept of the camera moving gradually into place. It should start movement slowly, speed up in the middle, slow down at the end, to come to an easier stop. This might be compared to a sine wave, but the way I'm coding, I'm actually controlling the pace at which the camera is changing, so it's more like the derivative of a sine wave, or a parabola. I tried some stuff with this, but ultimately I decided to turn the parabola into steps like this. It starts moving at 3 pixels a frame, then 4, then 3, and finally down to 2. I've now changed it so it starts at 2, then 3, then back to 2. This is hardly a parabola, but the slower speed feels smoother, I think. So that's where the horizontal camera is right now. now, so what else have I been working on? One more thing I just added is Jake, who makes music and is also making sound effects and basically designed the HUD for me. Right, I think I said it was a solo dev earlier in this video. That was a mistake. Well, Jake had an idea to give the player some sort of aura to reflect the run meter, some way to visually represent the run meter on the character. And I did that with these sparkles that will appear if you get your run meter to 10 or more, and will become more frequent and brighter the higher your run meter is. I really like them. I think they add a lot of game juice and make maintaining a high combo a lot of fun. I might tweak some variables or their look in the future, but Jake, what do you think of this? Right, I think that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you are the person who filled out the form, thank you again. I'm very sorry the form collected your email. I fixed that now, so it won't automatically collect emails, and I've deleted your email, didn't mean to take it. And if you are not the person who filled out the form, hey, did you know I have a Google form that you could consider filling out after trying my game? Please consider trying my game. Thank you.